Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a webinar on vaccination information. My name is Jackie Goldberg, and I'm your school board member for Board District 5. And I'm so proud to represent all of the parents and families and students and employees who live and work in Board District 5. Before we begin, though, I want to take care of a few items.
Buenas tardes a todos y bienvenidos al foro virtual del Distrito 5 de la Junta Directiva, webinario sobre la vacunación. Les hablo Jackie Goldberg, que con orgullo represento al Distrito 5 de la Junta de Educación. Antes de comenzar, quisiéramos repasar unos puntos generales.
First, you can listen to this webinar in English or in Spanish. For Spanish, you click the interpretation button at the bottom of your Zoom window and then select Spanish. It looks like a globe. We have a wonderful interpreters from the LAUSD Translation Unit, and they will be translating everything that's been said. So again, if you're at a computer and you want to listen in Spanish, click the interpretation button at the bottom of your Zoom screen and select Spanish.
Primeramente, pueden escuchar este webinario en inglés o en español. Para escuchar en español, den clic en el botón Interpretación al pie de su ventana de Zoom y seleccionen Español. Nuestras maravillosas intérpretes de la unidad de traducción de LAUSD están traduciendo todo lo que estamos diciendo. Así que, nuevamente, si están en sus computadoras y desean escuchar en español, den clic en el botón Interpretación al pie de la ventana de Zoom y seleccionen español.
If you have any trouble switching the language to Spanish using the interpretation global button, you can also use your phone to call into our Spanish audio line, which is already up and running. The number and access code for that were on the invitation for this event.
En caso de dificultades para cambiar al español con el botón de interpretación, pueden escuchar por teléfono llamando a nuestra línea de audio en español que ya está activada en estos momentos. El número y el código de acceso están en la invitación de este evento.
Second, we have an American Sign Language interpreter as well. To continue to see them throughout the town hall, make sure to keep your Zoom is set to gallery view so that you can see all of us at once. If you're viewing on a mobile device, just swipe left until you see multiple panelists on your screen. Finally, you might notice that the format today is different. This session is intended to be informational. That means we're going to try to give you information with me asking some questions of our good doctor and her giving us some answers as to what is the reality and what is the myth. Very soon, we will have a second town hall, and that will be where you will get to ask the doctors any questions you want about vaccinations, vaccines, and COVID-19. So it is just about all of us learning about what is real and what is a myth. And next time will be, I still have questions and you'll have a chance to ask them. So now let's get started. It is my great pleasure, and I ask you to give a warm welcome to our guest, Dr. Rosina Franco. She will be guiding us on the importance of getting vaccinated and what the frequent myths are that surround the COVID vaccine. Thank you for joining us, and take it away, Dr. Franco.
Hello, everybody. Buenas tardes a todos. My name is Rosina Franco, Dr. Rosina Franco. I'm the senior physician for student medical services. I've been a physician with the district now for about 14 years. And my passion is the job that I have right now. I come from these very communities. I went to Braddock Drive Elementary School as a child, and grew up as part of a Mexican immigrant family growing up in Los Angeles, new to the country, new to the language, new to the culture. And I understand very much what a lot of our families, go through, and how they feel lost sometimes, especially right now during these times of COVID. So I'm very happy to be here to help educate everybody and help them hopefully feel more comfortable with the vaccine. And I want to encourage everybody to get it. And I'm hoping that at the end of this, that I will encourage some of you to get it.
Very good.
So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. I know your time is really stretched thin these days. So let's start with the first question that comes up all the time. I already had COVID-19. So why do I need to get vaccinated? I mean, really, I've already had it. Aren't I safe?
So for people who had COVID in the past, we don't know what strain you got infected with, right? And so the immunity that you have, although it will give you some immunity, we don't know how long that immunity will last. So that immunity can last you probably for at least 3 months. We don't know beyond that. But the other thing is, it probably won't provide you immunity to the other variants, which is something the vaccines have an advantage over natural infection. The vaccines have proven to provide immunity towards other variants, such as well the Delta variant. Now, it might not have as much protection against the Delta variant as other ones, but it still has very strong protection, more so than if you had natural immunity. And I can say a lot more, but I'll let you ask me some more questions, Jackie, so that maybe I can answer some of those questions with what I want to continue saying.
Well, sort of that goes along with this is, can I get COVID-19 from the vaccine?
No, you cannot get COVID, the disease, from the vaccine. There's no way, it's impossible. The vaccine does not have a live virus. The vaccines that are out there, Johnson & Johnson, and the mRNA vaccines, which are Pfizer, which is, you may or may not know now, is called Comirnaty, and Moderna, do not have live vaccines. So there's absolutely no way you can get sick from the vaccine.
I understand that children don't die from COVID. So, but they might get, could they die from the vaccine? And are we putting them at risk when even if they got it, they wouldn't get very sick?
So although you're right, children tend to not get as sick in general from the actual infection than adults, they can get very sick. And in fact, more and more kids are getting infected with the COVID-19 virus, and more and more children are being hospitalized because of the COVID virus. And the chances of you getting sick from the actual infection are many, many, many times fold more risky than you having any kind of serious side effect from the vaccine. Vaccines cause very few, very rarely cause side effects, and the COVID vaccine falls along with that. So definitely, a child getting sick with the virus is much more risky than any, potential side effect the child might have from the vaccine.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure that I've heard that before, because people tell me that I could, get myocarditis or some kind of heart inflammation from the vaccine. Is that true?
So there have been very few rare cases of myocarditis, which is an inflammation of the muscle of the heart, of children who have gotten the vaccine. It's usually young men, but again, it's rare. And in most cases, the vast majority of cases, they have been mild cases that have resolved with minimal treatment, and within a couple of weeks, they're back to normal. However, there's much more risk of getting myocarditis or other heart conditions with the actual infection. And as a matter of fact, I'm not sure, but some of you may have heard of the term MIS-C. So that is a condition in which children have gotten inflammation of the heart and they've actually been hospitalized. And some children have died from getting this heart condition from the virus, from getting infection with the virus. And the other thing is that because of the risks that the actual infection can cause to the heart, if somebody gets the infection, and for instance, you're playing sports at school, you can't be cleared to play sports until you see a physician. And then you have to do a gradual return to play protocol to make sure that the virus hasn't affected your heart and your ability to play safely. So, so again, you're much more likely to have inflammation of the heart or have some other condition of the heart with the infection than you could with the vaccine. And again, with the vaccine, it's a much shorter course and much quicker response to treatment.
I want to go just touch on that a little more because I hear this one all the time.
Sure.
So you're saying that if you get COVID, you could get this myocarditis.
Yes.
And that if you got myocarditis after you had COVID, it would be very severe likely.
It could be very severe, yes. And it doesn't even have to be myocarditis. It doesn't even have to be a severe form of myocarditis, but it could be long lasting with the infection. Again, with the vaccine, there have been very few cases, probably a handful, many more with the actual infection, to the point where if you have a positive COVID test, you have to see a doctor before you can start playing sports again, to make sure that your heart was not affected. Even if you have a mild illness with the actual COVID infection, you have to have your heart evaluated before playing sports.
Another one that I hear all the time is that because this is an emergency use vaccine, that we're really just experimenting on children, because not all the vaccines are fully approved by the FDA. And so why are we experimenting on our kids?
So it's not experimental. An authorization is an approval. It's just a very fast approval, an emergency approval, because we are in a pandemic. So the vaccine has been studied, and it was considered, and it is still considered to be safe. And now we've had many months of the vaccine being given to many children, and still the vaccine has proven to be safe and very effective against serious illness from the virus. So again, an authorization is still an approval, it's just an emergency approval. But all the same studies that you do for regular approval were done to get this authorization. Nothing was skipped.
And then I heard that LA Unified gets paid by the federal government for every shot we give, and that's why the board mandated it.
No, that's absolutely not true. None of us get paid. The vaccine is given to us for free. We give it to the community for free. You know, we don't have any sort of financial win or gain with giving the vaccine. What we get is children in school. We prevent people from getting sick. We prevent people from getting hospitalized. We prevent people from dying by promoting the vaccine. That is the purpose of us promoting the vaccine, to get kids and staff back to school safely and to prevent people from getting sick.
Here's another one I hear all the time. This I get mostly from students. I'm healthy, I'm strong, I'm in good health. I've never been a sick day in my life. Why do I need a vaccination? I can fight this.
So even people that are healthy and strong get the virus, and people that are healthy and strong have died because of the virus, getting sick with the virus, unfortunately. And we never know where we're all going to fall, right? So even though you're healthy, you know, most likely if you get the virus, you'll probably recover and be okay. But even people who are healthy, a lot of times have symptoms, and many times there have been many reports of long COVID, where even if you didn't have any symptoms when you had COVID, months later you might start having symptoms that are called long COVID. So anybody who gets the infection risks getting long-term symptoms and illness or conditions, medical conditions, from getting the infection, which is something that has not occurred with the vaccine.
So how come we have all this information that's not true? What's going on? I mean, I've heard all of these stories before. Do people
Well-
just make this stuff up, or what's going on here?
Well, in some cases, yes. You know, people do make things up because they just don't believe in vaccines and they don't understand how important they are. In other cases, people are just misinformed. You know, there's a lot of information on the internet, and if you're not somebody who is medical like me and has medical background and understands how to interpret science and knows what's fake and what's not, a lot of what you hear sounds good, right? It sounds very convincing, even when it's coming from somebody who says they're a doctor.
Puede venir de alguien que dice que es un doctor, pero
The vast majority of the medical community, the public health community, make the recommendation to have the virus. We always talk about risks and benefits, and the benefit here far, far outweighs any kind of risk. There's a risk in anything, right? When you get into a car, you put a seatbelt on, right? And just because somebody gets into an accident and gets hurt, even though they're wearing a seatbelt, doesn't mean that seatbelt is not worth wearing, right? It doesn't mean that seatbelt hasn't protected you somewhat. You know, it protects most people, and that is why you wear that seatbelt. It's the same thing with the vaccine. It may not be 100%, but it's going to protect you, and you're more likely going to either not get sick or not get seriously sick if you get the vaccine.
Okay, that sounds pretty good. All right, so the other question that I hear less often, but I do hear, is this going to affect my reproductive system? Am I going to not be able to have babies? And the other one, just like that, is it going to change my DNA?
So I'll answer the first one, the last one first. No, it will not change your DNA. It cannot do that. The mRNA from the mRNA vaccine that goes into your cells, what it does is it makes a small benign or not dangerous part of the virus, which is part of the spike protein. Once it does that, it completely dissolves. None of it ever enters the nucleus, which is the center part of the cell that has the DNA. So there's no way that it can affect your DNA. The other question about infertility, yeah. So millions of people have gotten the vaccine and has not shown in any way to affect fertility or reproduction. It doesn't affect your ability to get pregnant at all. It hasn't shown it. You know, millions of people again have gotten the vaccine, and there's no evidence of that. So that is a myth.
Okay, so if there are side effects from every vaccination, and there are, I don't know of a single one that doesn't, how do we know it's safe to do this? Why, you know, we all worry about it, and you hear all these stories, and maybe they're made up, but maybe they're real, I don't know. But I don't know of a single vaccination that doesn't have some side effects, a sore arm or something. So
Yes.
why do we need to do this at all?
So yes, you're right. I mean, the science of vaccines is one of the most well-known sciences that we have, right? The vaccines have proven over decades to be safe and effective, and they have been one of the most successful public health efforts that this world has ever had. Because of vaccines, we no longer see illnesses like polio. We rarely see mumps. Most recently, we've seen some measles because people, you know, refuse to get the vaccine. But we don't see smallpox anymore because it was eradicated. All of these things have gone away because of vaccines. We know vaccines to be safe and very effective, and the COVID vaccines are no different. They're very safe and they're very effective.
Okay, so I've been vaccinated and I still get COVID. What's that about?
So no vaccine is going to promise you that you're not going to get infected 100% of the time. More than 90% of the time, it will prevent you from getting infected. And almost 100% of the time, it'll prevent you from getting seriously ill. More than 90% of the time, it'll prevent you from having symptoms, or it will only cause mild symptoms. That is that no vaccine promises that you will never get an infection 100% of the time. What it does is it prevents either symptoms or serious illness. That is the purpose of vaccines. And these COVID vaccines do just that. They do the same thing as all other vaccines that we all have gotten. We've all gotten many vaccines. Yeah, I'm sorry, Jackie, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just had my booster because I'm old. And well, no, but you know, the vast majority of people who died until the Delta variant were old people. And that's not true anymore, is it? Now the people that are dying are in their 20s and 30s and 40s, aren't they?
Yes, yes. Now more the vast majority of people that are being hospitalized are younger people, and especially people who are not vaccinated. So hospitals are, you know, more than 90% of the people that are in the hospitals because of COVID are because they're not vaccinated. So now anybody who dies from COVID, it's because they didn't get vaccinated, and that was 100% preventable because we have the vaccine.
I think that makes it more tragic in some ways. I don't know why, but it just seems to, because, you know, when we didn't have the vaccine, we had no choice. We had to wear masks, stay distance, keep trying to stay away from any possible infection, and it didn't work. Now, but I see we're still getting about 2,000 cases a day in America, and people are still dying in America every single day. I think that's a good argument to get vaccinated. So I want to just, before we go any further, I want to just remind students out there, here's the rules. Anyone 12 years old and older, you are in in-person athletics or band or drill team, you have to have your first shot, it's already passed, by October the 3rd. And the second shot, no later than October 31st. If you still haven't gotten your first shot and you want to play sports, get it now, even though it's late, because you will be allowed back into sports after your second shot has given you protection and your teammates protection. So please do that. Even if you're late, don't say, oh gosh, I missed the October 3rd deadline, forget it. No, get it today, get it tomorrow. And in a couple of more weeks, you can get the next shot and you'll be back on your team again. However, if you're not on a team and you're 12 years old and older, you have until November the 21st to get your first shot, and no later than December 19th, which is our last day before winter break. Why are we doing this? Because when we start second semester, what do we want, Dr. Franco?
We wanted kids to come back to school in a safe environment. We want to prevent infections. We want to prevent the spread of this disease. And know that every time somebody gets infected, the more and more this disease gets spread, we have a higher chance of newer variants. And every time there's a new variant, there's a chance that it might circumvent the ability for the vaccine to protect you. And so the sooner we get everybody vaccinated, the less spread there'll be, the less likely we'll have new variants, and the sooner we'll get rid of this pandemic so that we can all go back to our normal lives. We all want that.
I read recently that there have been more than 5 million childhood cases of COVID. Does that sound like a number that makes sense to you?
It does. I don't know the exact number, but it does, especially now, considering that they're the younger ones are the ones that are not vaccinated, and those are the ones that are coming up with more positive tests.
How does vaccinating adults and 12 years old and older help children who can't get vaccinated?
So if you have everybody in your home vaccinated that can get vaccinated, then you're less likely to get infected and less likely to spread the illness to your younger siblings at home. So by protecting yourself, you're protecting your family and you're protecting your community. Getting vaccinated is not just about us, the singular person. Getting vaccinated is also about protecting our community.
I think that's kind of an important note, because, you know, a lot of people have said to me, well, why do I need to get vaccinated? I'm healthy, or I've had it or something. And I kind of like to remind them that we all live together. We all work together. We go to school together. And if people are unvaccinated, they threaten the safety and health even of vaccinated people, because there are these breakout infections. So I think what the district is thinking is it's time for us to say, it's time for this pandemic to be over. I've had it. Haven't you had it? I've had it.
Yeah, I've had it.
I'm a movie goer. I haven't been inside a movie theater in 2 years. It's breaking my heart. I want to see Dune. Oh no, excuse me. I'm digressing here. But you know what I'm saying. I want to go back to normal, and that's why I think that I want everyone who is eligible to get vaccinated.
I want my big family to get together and have
Yeah.
Thanksgiving together and Christmas together, and we still can't do that, you know, because we have younger kids in the family that are not vaccinated. So, you know, it affects all of us. It affects all of us when we all don't do our part to protect each other.
So is there a difference between Moderna, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson in terms of safety or in terms of value to you? Should I, if I am going to get a vaccination, should I request one or the other?
Well, they all work well to protect you against serious illness, hospitalization, and death. They all do. They've all proven that so far. That's why the FDA is having such a difficult time figuring out whether or not to approve boosters, although they did, you know, several weeks ago for the Pfizer and just today for Moderna, and they'll be deliberating about Johnson & Johnson tomorrow. But the reason why that they did go ahead and approve emergency use for the booster, it's because it's safe. It's safe. There hasn't been any increased risk to a person by getting a third dose. And so if we can give you something that's safe, that's probably going to help protect you more, even more, especially against these new variants, then they're going to approve it, and they did. So did that answer your question, or did I go off on a tangent?
Well, no, that sort of did, but I'm saying, so let's say I'm a student and I want to play sports and I've missed my October 3rd deadline and I get a one-shot Johnson & Johnson. Can I play?
Oh, so if you have to be 18 and over to get the Johnson & Johnson, and 2 weeks after that first dose you'll be considered fully immunized. So they're all good vaccines. And really the best vaccine for you to get is the one that you can get the soonest. Really, that's the truth. And it may be that later on you will need a booster. Most vaccines require several doses.
Requieren varias dosis para tener la inmunidad total. Esa es la norma. Muy pocas solo requieren una dosis, por ejemplo.
At least 3 or 4 for diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. You need 4 to 5, and then you need boosters every 10 years of the tetanus, right? So, I mean, those are just some examples. But, you know, most vaccines do require several doses. And with these COVID vaccines, they're new. So we're still figuring out what your optimal, how many doses you need for optimal or best protection. But for now, we know that 2 of the mRNA and 1 of the Johnson & Johnson is very good. And now you can get a booster of Pfizer, pretty soon of Moderna, and I predict that pretty soon of Johnson & Johnson as well.
Yeah, I read something that Johnson & Johnson a few months after the first shot gives very good protection, but I don't know if I read that. Okay, so if I get vaccinated, what kinds of reactions are typical? Not the unusual ones like myocarditis, but what typically happens if I'm going to get a reaction to the vaccination?
So most of us have gotten vaccines in the past, right? Maybe the more recent ones that we might remember are things like tetanus, right? Because that one we get every 10 years. So think about, if you can remember the symptoms that you had or side effects that you had with the tetanus shot, it's pretty much the same for the COVID vaccine. Soreness in the arm where you got it, maybe a little bit of swelling, maybe a little bit of redness. Some people rarely might have like a low-grade fever. Some people, and in fact, that's what we tell parents of little kids. You know, if your child has a low-grade fever, you can give them some Tylenol, right? We always tell them that. Maybe a little bit of muscle aches, fatigue, headache. You know, those are the kinds of things that people usually have. They're usually mild. They usually go away within a day max. By day 3, you should be totally fine. But most people by day 2, they're like normal again.
Yeah, that was me. You know, my arm was a little sore. I noticed it when I rolled over in bed on it. Oh, wow. But the next day it was gone. just gone. Okay, I also want to remind employees that Friday is the deadline for you to be engaged in your vaccinations for being an employee of the district. And we will have all the LD local district offices open all weekend with giving shots. And there are other places as well you can find on our website, or your union has got all the information to help you do that. We want all our employees to stay with us, to stay strong, and to be vaccinated. Okay, let me ask a couple of more questions. If I want to get a flu shot, should I get a flu shot even though I've had a COVID shot? Or should I say, well, I got a COVID shot, I don't need a flu shot?
Well, they're two totally different viruses, so definitely you should get your flu shot, and you can get it on the same day that you get your COVID vaccine. You don't have to wait, 14 days or whatever. You can get them both on the same day.
Okay, so it doesn't interfere with each other. I was worried that if I got them both together, they might, interrupt each other.
No, you can ask wherever you get your vaccines, you can get one shot in one arm and one shot in the other, so you're not as sore, but you can get them both at the same day.
Okay. Is there one thing that if you were to talk to a parent who's really nervous about getting their children's vaccinated, what would be the thing that you think would be the most helpful for them to know? Not a myth, but just knowledge. What should they know that would help them make a decision on behalf of their children to get vaccinated?
Well, there's a lot of things I could say. One of the things I would say is, my children are a little bit older now, but if my children were younger, I would definitely vaccinate them. Knowing everything that I know about the vaccine, I would vaccinate my own children. My children are in their early 20s, they're vaccinated. What I would say as well is, just like all of the other vaccines they've gotten, the COVID vaccines are just as safe. And actually work better, have a better efficacy profile than the vaccines that they've already gotten. The hepatitis B, the measles, mumps, rubella, the polio, all of those, right? And really, it's the same thing. And although it is a newer vaccine, we've had new vaccines pop up all the time, and we give them to children, and parents haven't had any questions. The thing about COVID, though, everything's about COVID now. Truths and lies. Everything's about COVID. So everybody's scared now about COVID, but it's really no different than any other vaccines we've given in the past. And we wouldn't recommend it if it wasn't for the, beneficial to the children, because we're here to help children. We're here to keep them healthy. We're here to keep them safe. And we wouldn't recommend something if we didn't strongly believe that it was safe. And like I mentioned before, the science and the proof of how well vaccines work is something, it's better than any other information we have about any other medical treatment we have. We know that vaccines are safe, and we've known this for decades now.
I have 10 family members in LAUSD schools, 7 of whom are eligible for vaccination and all of whom are vaccinated, and 3 who are too young. So let me ask you, they're talking about Pfizer having a 5 to 11-year-old vaccine. Isn't that scary to give vaccines to little kids like that?
No, in fact, it's probably better. They'll probably have a better immune response. See, the reason why we give vaccines to children when they're very young is because the younger you are, the better your immune system reacts to that vaccine to provide you long-lasting immunity. It works better when the younger you're given. That's why the day children are born, they're given their first hepatitis B vaccine. And you start getting vaccines at 2 months old. The other ones are starting at 2 months, then 4 months, then 6 months, then a year. That's why you get them all when you're really young, because your body is able to, produce this immune response that protects you for a long time, way better than when you're older. It just works better. Your immune system works better, and they have less side effects to the vaccine. Just like children tend to have less serious reactions to an infection against COVID, they also have less serious reactions to vaccines.
So you're saying that it's better, they have a better chance of getting protected by the vaccine than people older than them. Wow, I would have thought it was just the opposite. Wow, that's really interesting. Thank you. I really didn't know that. I thought, oh, I was a little scared, you know, because my youngest of the 4, 7, 11 in schools is only a first grader, and I was thinking, I don't know about Mabel getting vaccinated, but what you're saying is that she'll probably do better than all the rest of us in terms of having a real coverage against COVID.
Yes, and also know that the dosing for smaller children is adjusted for smaller children. So they probably won't get the dose that we get. They'll get a smaller dose, and that's all they need. They because they respond better to vaccines, they only need a smaller dose.
Amazing, amazing. I had it just the opposite in my head. I thought, well, you know, I understand giving it to someone my age. All right, we're old, you know, we're going to be seriously problemed here. Okay, are there any, let me look at my list of questions and make sure I've asked everything I want to ask. Okay, can a vaccinated person spread the virus?
Yes, if a vaccinated person gets infected with COVID, they can spread the virus, although they're probably less likely to be able to do so. But with this new Delta variant, it really was a game changer. So even if you're asymptomatic, you can spread the virus. So that's why everybody in LAUSD is getting tested, whether you're vaccinated or not. Whether you're symptomatic or not, everybody's getting tested every week to make sure that you're not, you know, unfortunately, one of those vaccinated persons that gets infected. However, vaccinated people are much, much less likely to get infected in the first place with the virus than somebody who's unvaccinated.
Okay, so so nothing is perfect here is what you're saying.
No,
but it's very, 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 very good.
That's correct. It's very, very good. Just like wearing a seatbelt. Just because you put that seatbelt doesn't mean that if you're in an accident, you're absolutely 100% not going to get hurt, but your chances of getting hurt are a lot less. That is why there's a law about you having to wear a seatbelt.
I see. So it's the same thing as having a law that you have to get vaccinated.
That's correct.
I got it.
And
I guess if we're talking, go ahead.
No, and I was going to say, and getting vaccinated doesn't just protect you, but it protects the other person. It's like when you put your seatbelt on, you're putting it on somebody else too.
Very good. I think if I think about this, the car and the seatbelt, I also think about the fact that there are a lot of people who think, well, I've been driving in my car for 15 years and I've never had an accident. I guess I won't bother wearing my seatbelt. Is that sort of like someone saying, I feel strong, so I don't need a vaccine?
That's correct. That's exactly right. Just because you've never been in an accident doesn't mean you won't get in one. So that's why we always wear our seatbelt, because you never know.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Very good. Okay. I'm getting this. I'm getting this. Good to have a doctor to ask, though, because
Sure.
Science is not my thing. History was my thing, but not science. And it's important to know. So I just want to say to all of you, I understand people who are reluctant to get a vaccine for themselves or their children. I get it. I get it. A whole bunch of people have spent a whole lot of time creating myths, and I'm going to say it, lies about what this vaccination can and cannot do and does and doesn't do. And it's not surprising that so many of us have heard these stories so many times that we have to say, well, it must be sort of true. I've heard it from 19 different places. So does it make it more true if I hear it from more places?
Of course not. You know, a lie is a lie is a lie, no matter how many times you hear it. You know, I don't know what else to say about that.
Yeah, okay. I think it is, to me, somewhat amazing, though, because the amount of people saying these things which aren't true, whether they believe them or whether they don't believe them, I don't really care, but they're saying things that aren't true, and it has an effect. If you hear the same thing that's a lie or a myth over and over again, I know I do. I'm human. I say, well, there must be some truth to it. The reality is there's no truth to these myths. None. Zero. Nada. Rien. Zero. And that's the problem, because there's a whole lot of people telling a whole lot of things that aren't true. And some of them believe it themselves. And I think some of them don't even believe it themselves. But whether they do or not, that makes it harder for all of us to make a really good scientific-based decision. Don't you think?
Yeah, so that's why it's really important for all of us to make sure that the source that we're getting our information from is a trusted source. So just because somebody says they're a doctor doesn't necessarily mean that they know what they're talking about, right? I'm a doctor, but I am board certified in family medicine. I have completed a fellowship in adolescent medicine. I have been giving immunizations for over 20 years. And I want to say that in all of those years, I've never had one person have a serious reaction in front of me. The reactions have been mostly, quite frankly, people who are scared of needles and faint. And so I just want to make sure that, you all understand. And now working with the school district, that's one of the main things that I do is I manage the free clinics that the school district has. And one of the things that we do is provide free vaccines to children, all vaccines. I know what I'm talking about. And when I read science, when I read articles, and I'm constantly educating myself every single day, multiple times a day, I'm reading medical articles. I can tell the difference between what's a lie and what's truth. And so what I ask you to do is to please check with trusted resources. And if you don't have somebody in your family who's a doctor who has that kind of experience, and most of you probably don't, there are trusted resources that you can go to. Like, for instance, the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, our LA County Department of Public Health has a lot of really good information on their website, and the California Department of Public Health. Those are very easy, accessible websites that you can get really good information from. That's trusted.
All right, so I think the message here today is there's a lot of myths and a lot of lies, and there is real science, and we can know it. We're smart enough. Even without being a doctor, I'm not a doctor, I'm smart enough, and you're smart enough to know whether it's a safe thing for you and your family, and we urge you to do it. It's required, but we urge you to do it because you love your family, you love your neighbors, you love your community, and certainly you love your school. With that, I'm going to say thank you to Dr. Franco. This has been wonderful. I thought I'd read a lot of stuff, but I learned a lot tonight myself, and I appreciate it. I hope everybody listening and watching did as well. We will post this online for people to see on Facebook so they can see it if you weren't able to come to the meeting tonight. And in a couple of weeks, we will have a different kind of meeting. We will have a town hall, and we'll have a couple of doctors, one with that deals with younger children and one with maybe older children and adults. And we will give you a chance to do the questioning, not just me. You can ask any question about vaccination or COVID you want. We'll have the experts here. We'll let you know when that happens. I want to thank all of our translators and our interpreters. And I certainly want to thank my staff, particularly Alejandra Leon, who put this all together. And to say to all of you, these are complicated, difficult times, but together we can talk to each other and we can listen to each other and we can help each other. And that's how we'll get through this terrible, terrible pandemic. Please be safe and healthy out there. Get vaccinated if you can. I do have a thing with needles. I don't like them. When I got my vaccination, I had my other arm out. I had turned and I was humming so that I didn't know it. And she said it was over. I'd already done it. Where get up and move on. Somebody else needs your seat. I didn't even know I'd had the vaccination. So I will tell you, as a person who is not fond of needles, this is an easy one. I really mean it. I didn't know she had done it. So good night. Take good care. Know that I am proud to represent you and that in a couple of weeks, you will get your chance to be the questioners of some doctors so that you can get final information that helps you make the right decision to get yourself and all eligible people in your family vaccinated and safe. Thank you so much and good night.
Thank you.
you, Dr. Franco. That was really great.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks for the opportunity. It was fun.
Good. Good, good, good.
Did you want me to stay on for any other questions?
I can't
or
think
I'm
of
okay?
it, but we are going to have another meeting in a couple of weeks in which we're going to have you and maybe a couple of others